He stabbed a teen repeatedly until he thought she was dead. 14 years later, he killed a woman and dumped her body in the woods.
So how is it that John Douglas White was free to fulfill a sick fantasy and kill yet again?
Target 8 investigator Ken Kolker has worked this story since the shocking murder of Rebekah Gay in Mount Pleasant, a killing that left a little boy without his mom.
Tonight, for the first time, Ken, you have answers about what happened here.
Yeah, Brian and Sue, what we discovered was a courtroom mistake, plea deals, old laws that failed to protect victims, and technology that wasn't advanced enough to keep John White behind bars.
I really hurt for that little boy. I really hurt for her family. They trusted him, so I know exactly what they're going through.
Teresa Morris was John White's first known victim 32 years ago. And she also trusted him until he stabbed her 15 times. She was just 17. For that, he spent 2 years in prison.
I'm really upset with the system.
And so are the relatives of White's second known victim, who had predicted that he would kill again.
Oh God, it tore my heart out because I knew that girl wouldn't have to die if they would just kept him in prison.
So how does a man serve just 14 years in prison for killing one woman and nearly killing another? Target 8 found those answers in old police and court records and in interviews with more than a dozen people. In 1980, John White was 22, married and living in Battle Creek when he invited his 17-year-old neighbor to his basement to look at his racetrack. The first jab was under her right shoulder blade, and he kept stabbing and smiling.
He wiped my mouth off and he kissed me and he held my hand and he said, "You're gonna go now." He says, "I'm real sorry you had to go like this." He says, "But what the f***, you're just a woman."
A jury convicted White of attempted murder and he got 5 to 10 years in prison.
They sent him away and they left me alone.
But he wasn't gone for long. What Teresa didn't know is that White appealed and won, claiming that his attorney made a mistake by not raising an insanity defense. White had claimed amnesia. But instead of a new trial, White got a deal. 2 years probation, no more jail time, as long as he got mental health treatment. The defense attorney whose mistake led to that appeal died recently. So did the judge. The prosecutor who approved the plea deal Conrad sent is now a Calhoun County judge. He declined to go on camera, but he told Target 8 that he has just a vague memory of the 32-year-old case. He says it's possible they agreed to a plea deal out of fear that White might actually win an insanity defense. He said White likely would get more prison time if this had happened under today's sentencing guidelines. Judges had no guidelines back then.
They promised me he wasn't gonna ever hurt anyone again.
9 years after White's probation was up, 26-year-old Vicky Sue Wall disappeared near Kalamazoo.
She's a good girl. She's a normal girl. Went to school, graduated, got a job.
White was still married with 2 kids and 1 on the way. He had met Vicky at work, and they were having an affair. Surveillance video showed Vicky getting into a black pickup with a bearded man in a Meijer parking lot at 3 in the morning. Deputy Eric Dunathan first questioned White, and White was evasive.
I knew that he had killed her.
White later told police he may have hurt Vicky during one of his blackouts. His wife told police about his multiple personalities, and police found possible traces of blood in his pickup.
He'd done a pretty good job of cleaning it.
But it's not clear what became of that. DNA testing was in its infancy. A state police DNA expert told Target 8 they needed a lot more blood for tests back then. Now they need just a speck. A source close to that 1994 investigation says a positive hit could have locked up a murder conviction. Relatives in the meantime kept searching for Vicky's body. 2 miles from that Meijer parking lot, a neighbor stumbled across the remains of Vicky Sue Wall across the street from this nature trail. But that was 6 weeks after she disappeared, and her body was so badly decomposed that police could never figure out how she died.
I noticed 2 drag marks.
He followed the marks down the 2-track.
And as I got further, I seen a white tennis shoe.
A trail of bent-over weeds led to a pair of women's underwear.
Right then when the odor hit me, and I noticed the skull was showing, That's when I turned around and hightailed it out of here.
Prosecutors charged White with open murder. In a jail letter written to his wife and obtained by Target 8, even White was preparing for life in prison. But he refused to talk or take a lie detector test. Without evidence, White pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter.
They felt they were lucky to get that because it took so long to find the body. She was so decomposed that they couldn't even figure out a cause of death.
White got the most time he could get, 8 to 15 years in prison. But he called it a tragic accident. And he said, quote unquote, "I love Vicky very much."
You'd like to see him go away for life, but you get what you can get.
Sources tell Target 8 that White later told a prison psychologist about his fantasies: to kill the prosecutor, Carrie Klein, and his defense attorney, Kathleen Brickley, and have sex with their bodies. The prison warned both women. Both declined to comment. In 2007, after serving nearly 13 years for Vicky Sue Wall's death, White was a free man.
He knew that he was mentally sick, but he refused to engage it and tell people about it and accept help for it.
He moved to Mount Pleasant, became pastor of a small church, got engaged.
He was completely crazy until the end.
On Halloween Day, he killed his fiance's daughter, 24-year-old Rebekah Gay, then dumped her body in a ditch. He told police it was part of a sexual fantasy involving dead women. The death has left a retired deputy shaking his head.
Were you shocked or surprised?
No. I knew he would do it again. It was inevitable.
Boy, really disturbing. You know, there's been a lot of changes in the court system, of course. Do you think something like this could happen today anymore?
In talking to the experts, it sounds unlikely. I mean, first off, you have sentencing guidelines. Back in 1980, there were no guidelines. And, nowadays, stabbing a woman 15 times, leaving her for dead, you would not just serve 2 years in prison. Then there was a Victims' Rights Act, which is also new. And that victim from 1980 would have been, kept, appraised of everything all down the line. And then, of course, there's DNA. With the incredible advances in DNA. In fact, they're putting his DNA into the FBI database, national database, to see if they can link him to other unsolved homicides.
Chilling.
Yes.
Ken Kolker, thank you for that.